Hey friends, it's Abigail of VC. Welcome back to Judgment Free Zone. We need vulnerability and empathy now more than ever. I hope you are able to find room for more curiosity, self-compassion, and empathy for yourself and others while you're here. I show up so you can too. Welcome back, Judgment Free Zone. I'm so excited as usual because I get pumped up for my podcast. I have Sheri on today, and Sheri is the founder of ShameLifter Society, a space for women to truly see and be themselves, share their stories and truth, and lean all the way into their healing and power. Sheri is also an eating disorder warrior, over a decade in recovery, a proven leader, 23 years in a Fortune 15 company, a grateful wife and mother, and a friends enthusiast, which I feel like we're friends now.
Okay.
So I'm excited to be a part of that.
Should we just throw the agenda out the window and just talk about friends?
I know we could, right? Well, that's the cool thing about Instagram, right? Or this like founded and funded sisterhood that we have is like I find people all the time that like are from Founded and Funded or Susie School. And like, it's really great that it's like you're already friends without being friends. It's just like happens. Totally. So I love it. So thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes. So we don't know you. Tell us about you. Tell us all the things. I mean, that was the first time that I learned when I asked you to send over your bio that you were in a Fortune 15 company. Like, what company is this?
Yeah. So I have worked for Cigna, which is a health services company across the globe. Okay. I've been with them straight out of college, 23 years. And it's been a great journey. It's been a long, fruitful career, a lot of great people that I've met. And it's helped me obviously in my journey as a leader within the organization, but then also with some of this work that I'm doing around shame and ShameLifter Society, a lot of tools and skills that I've been able to incorporate from corporate life into the smaller entrepreneurship world and ShameLifter Society.
Right. Well, and I guess I should let people know too, is obviously one of the reasons I was super attracted to you was because we're both in shame work, right? And so we are, we're in the field of shame.
We're in the thick.
We are. We like to be in the thick of it with you. And so I remember Hannah, my best friend, she immediately told me, and this is all these memories are coming to me now. She immediately told me, because I told her I found you out of like Susie School something again. And she was like, oh yeah, I wanted to connect you guys. I was like, oh, well, I already reached out to her, so we're good to go. Okay. So yes. So I love it. Obviously love what you're doing and love your platform. And
the whole reason, ShameLifter Society came to be was, as you had mentioned in my bio, I had struggled with an eating disorder for many, many years. And when I had started recovery, I really distanced myself from it because I was filled with shame around my journey with an eating disorder. And as I actually truly got into healing, I realized that my story is my superpower, and what I have overcome or continue to deal with on a daily basis is my strength. And that if I leaned all the way into it and shared my story, I would be helping other people and I would be helping myself, because shame doesn't get us anywhere but in a dark hole. When you share your story, that shame goes away and there's light there. So that's how ShameLifter Society started, because it was really out of my own personal journey and wanting to lean into what used to cause me some of the greatest shame in my life.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you sharing that. And I think that honestly, that's a perfect segue of talking about what we're going to talk about today, which is toxic positivity. And I think that you just sharing your story and feeling the deep hurt and the pain is what got you on the other side. So toxic positivity, the definition is the assumption or belief that a happy, optimistic state across all situations is ideal, creating denial, minimization, and invalidation of other emotions. And, we we can really do that to ourselves a lot, as that's what shame does, is creates
we
this.
We do it to ourselves and we do it to other people.
Mm-hmm.
And the pendulum has swung so far in this direction of toxic positivity. And I know we'll go deep here in some of it, but I feel like it initially must have been created as like a tool or a practice to help people battling certain things. And it actually became a cause of anxiety, depression, not feeling enough, shame spirals. So it's something that's pervasive.
Yeah. I mean, even there's this fine line, and I think there's fine lines in a lot of areas that we work in, finding that balance that can be helpful or hurtful. And even with affirmations, like affirmations can be so helpful, but honestly, if you're just saying like, I am enough, and it's not hitting anything, then you can literally start that cycle right away of like, well, like, am I not enough because I can't feel enough because I'm saying I'm enough?
Bingo. Yeah. And how about, affirmations are a great tool, but there are going to be times and circumstances where an affirmation isn't going to be the answer. Yeah. And like going in deep to a therapy session or letting out a good cry or swearing and like throwing things are what you need to do instead of forcing yourself to be like, I'm enough, because you're never going to actually work through it. Because affirmations, for example, aren't always the answer.
Exactly. Well, even on one of my podcasts, I met with Molly Kate Wellness for intuitive eating. And, we were talking about, because I had written up, on my wall about like my affirmations that I do, because I do believe in affirmations. I do think that they're powerful. It's just a matter, again, of that verbiage that you're using. Like, again, if it's not hitting you, it's not going to do anything. And I think she was really helpful in just adding one word when I was like, it was like before it was like, I'm seeing, or I'm, my body is more than, the way that I look or something. And she just put in like, I'm learning to love my body. You know what I mean? It's just that one.
I know exactly what you mean. I just did the same thing. So, I would do the whole, like, I am. And there were times where you just don't feel that and it wasn't resonating. So mine shifted to, I'm okay to release control and try to go with the flow.
Yeah.
Where before it was like, I'm control free and like peace filled. Yes. And it's like, no, I'm okay to release control and try to go with the flow. I'm like, oh my gosh, that feels so much more authentic.
Yes.
Right. And toxic positivity is the opposite of authentic because it's forcing yourself into a mindset or a practice that maybe doesn't align with that moment or that situation.
Yeah. We're just in this space right now of, if you don't have anything other than positive feelings, then we're labeled as good if we only have positive feelings. And if we have any other kind of emotion, it's negative, or we're labeled as emotional,
we're labeled as emotional, or we're labeled to feel like maybe we're ungrateful.
Yeah.
And, because I mean, if we're going to get into some of the details here, like gratitude at its core is a benefit. It is something that we know scientifically can help pull people out of anxious states. We know that, you can't really hold like a true grateful moment and fear at the same time. Like those are scientific studies that have been proven, but at the same time, you can't force feed yourself gratitude all of the time. And I'm using this as it's like the same thing as like, you don't always want to have ice cream. Like sometimes you're so excited to eat that ice cream cone, but like if you ate it and forced yourself to eat it all of the time, no matter how you were feeling or what you were craving, you'd be like, this is disgusting. I don't want this ice cream. Same thing with gratitude. So I have even found for myself, like I was trying to do all of the things to be like this positive light, this grateful light. And it was like, I have to do my, like, as soon as my feet hit the floor, I have to get out my journal and do my gratitude practice. I have to do my gratitude meditation. Like, oh my gosh, I just have to be grateful for everything. Because if I'm grateful for everything, then I can't be any of these other things. And I don't want to be these other things. I want to be this positive, joyful being, because there's so many people out there promoting like that's how you live your best fulfilled life. And I got to a point where the gratitude practice and all of the components associated with it was causing me more anxiety instead of less.
Yeah.
Because then the mornings that I didn't get up extra early and do my practice, or the mornings that I forgot to write my 5 to 10 things first thing, I would shame spiral. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I didn't do what I was supposed to do. Now I'm not living my best life. Now I'm off track. Like, I don't deserve to be this person. I don't deserve, like, I shouldn't be in front of people trying to help them on their journey of healing because I didn't do all my gratitude steps.
Right.
And that's where it becomes toxic.
Yep. Absolutely. It can show us like what's wrong with me. Like, why am I not happy or grateful? You know, what can't I give what I'm getting that is out there? You know, like this whole, if I just think positive, or what if I think what I think about, I come about, you know what I mean? Like all these like messages that are coming to us. Yes. And I think this whole manifestation and abundance mindset, like, can be an amazing tool, and it can be helpful, just like finding the right therapist, right? Anything that we use can be for good or evil. And I'm not saying that the people out there might be meaning for their stuff to be harmful. We're all learning and everyone perceives things differently. I just think that we need to allow ourselves to be careful and curious, because it has the potential to perpetuate shame if we're not careful. And having those core beliefs come up, just like you're saying about the shame coming up, of like, it starts to create this I'm not enough, or I'm defective, or I'm unlovable, or shoulda, coulda, woulda shame cycles. And they can have a huge impact. And someone who doesn't consider themselves a very positive person, you know, I think they need to know that there's room for all of those emotions, right?
There has to be. We are not created to walk around positive and happy all of the time. We are created with a range of emotion, and they're all there for a reason, to teach us something, to tell us something. Absolutely. And it doesn't mean that the feelings are good or bad.
Yeah.
It means that they're feelings. And the one thing that has been a really helpful tool for me in some of this is a feelings wheel. So if you go to therapy, like, they're a tool through that. There's a company called the Recovery Box, and they have these. I actually have one right here. They have all sorts of different feelings wheels. This is the needs wheel. There's sensation wheels. I carry them in my purse. They're in like every room.
I love that.
It helps to identify whatever the feeling is and accept it, instead of trying to like manifest it away or gratitude it away. Because then if you're doing that, instead of actually leaning into it, you're, as we were talking about before, you're not actually being authentic to yourself, and you're creating yourself more harm than good.
Right. And I think, you know, like when you were talking about like, yes, like making or saying the things that you're grateful for are awesome. You know, I do that too. And I do it with my kids and we talk about it. I think it's when it becomes toxic too, when you're like, I was listening to something that was saying like, you know, write down the things. I think it's Brene Brown's new podcast with somebody. She said that, you know, like writing down the things that you're grateful for, or the things that are bad in your life, and then flipping it over and like changing it to the things that you're grateful for. Like that dismisses those feelings of what you're having. And in reality, if we were just able to look at those feelings that we're having and sit with them and figure out what we need and what those emotions are coming from, we're going to be able to create room, actually, just naturally.
That's right.
for the gratefulness in our lives.
Yeah, that's right. And there's just, I think it's most simply put, we just don't need to have an all or nothing mentality.
Absolutely.
we're human. And so let's just feel and be everything. And those times where, yes, we want to have a gratitude practice or an exercise, movement practice, or, we want to go and have a therapist, like whatever it is that helps you to live a more positive and fulfilled life and to have an abundant mindset, or whatever that goal is, like do it. And like everything else, do it in moderation. Right. It's like, give yourself the grace. I'm always saying like, I got to give more grace to myself, to others, like give yourself the grace instead of turning it into, I've got to be this all of the time, or therefore I am bad.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that that's, even for myself, like and I'm sure you could probably relate to this, when we are on a platform, talking about shame all the time. I myself was trying to find this balance of like, I don't want people to think that I'm just like in my shit all the time. Like, or that, you know what I mean? Yes. Or that like, I'm just like, oh, we all have sad feelings. Like, let's just feel everything. You know what I mean? And I think that that's where I kind of, for myself, I use that space of like reels. I really kind of like feel my feelings in my reels and on, or like real life on my stories. But that's where people get to see that, like the quirkiness and like funny side of me, or even like on the podcast. Like I genuinely like am a happy person. Actually, I'm very naturally optimistic. Yeah. Even when I was in my shame, I was very optimistic. Same. And more like, again, going back to what we said, like that's when I was more in my own toxic positivity of pushing down the feelings. But I couldn't, and again, I don't know if you can relate to this too. It was almost like I really do feel more joy and gratitude now that I've felt it though.
Like my gosh. I mean, the opposite of joy is pain.
Right. Exactly.
The opposite of happy is sad. If you don't know sad, if you don't know pain, then how can you truly know the joy and the happy? Like you have to know all of it in order to truly feel it and be alive in it. So 100% understand what you're saying. If you don't lean into it, whatever it is, good, bad, or indifferent, you're not going to truly understand the other side of it either.
Right. So how has toxic positivity had an impact on you?
Well, I obviously use the example of the gratitude practice and it being something where, so I am a personality. I don't know. Do you do the Enneagram at all?
Yeah. I mean, I'm really new to it, but I have a friend who's like very much into it.
Okay. So I'm a 3, which is an achiever. I'm all about, like, I'm going to set a to-do list. I'm going to do my goals. And so when it was probably now like a good 3 or so years ago, I really got on this journey of like self-discovery and really wanting to elevate my life and elevate how I thought and felt. And, it started on a really like positive, no pun intended, path. And then it was like, there's so much out there. And I certainly don't want to call out people or organizations or platforms, but there's so much out there. It's like 5 tips to happiness, or, 5 to do this, or 3 to do that, or, this is how you're going to thrive. This is how you're going to make, your dreams come true. And there was so much serving of it. And because I'm an achiever, I was like taking it all in, and I wasn't pausing, like you were saying, to be careful or curious about what actually resonated most with me. I'm like, just give me all of the positivity for how I'm going to get to this elevated self and live my best life. And so I took it all on. I was like, I'm going to drink the gallons of water, and I'm going to move my body every day, and I'm going to dance in the kitchen with my kid, and get up extra early, and gratitude, and listen to every podcast and read every book. Like for 2 years, I did not read a book for fun. I was just like reading books about mindset. And so it just became so all consuming. And I recently had gone back to therapy. I hadn't been in almost a decade, and my anxiety was like through the roof. And I was doing all of the things and yoga and meditation, everything else I listed. And my anxiety was like at an all-time high. And I'm like, what is going on? Like, I'm getting an A+ on doing all of the things, and I'm not positive. Like, I'm not living my best life.
Yeah.
And my therapist said something very simply to me, like, what if the answer is nothing?
Yeah.
And I was like, what do you mean? And she's like, what if the answer is not doing all of that? What if the answer is nothing and just sitting and being in it, and like over time seeing what feels like the right path for you and living your truth and I was like, oh my gosh. So I had consumed it all. And because of the achiever in me was like, it became work. It didn't actually come about having a certain mindset or a certain life. It was about checking off the box of doing the, instead of the 5 that each individual was like offering, of doing like the 20 that, a handful of people were offering every day. And it just swallowed me up. Instead of helping solve and create for me, it swallowed me.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think, with that, we are obviously in such a culture of like instant gratification, and like everything's at our fingertips, that it's so easy to just, how often do you really just like turn off your phone? I would be like wild to say, how often do people really even do it for 15 minutes? Like, I feel like that's fair, really, in our society. Yeah. And so I can totally relate to that. And, I don't know if you can relate to, I had a very chaotic childhood too. So I think sometimes to fulfill that chaotic, childhood, we go into this, like, I need, and we almost create it for ourselves rather than just being and resting in the silence. Like, I'm so good at being busy. Am I good at being quiet? No. It's that's when I challenge myself, when I can like be silent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and when I don't know, like this goes on the same thing. So yes, same chaotic childhood. I actually think it's more over like the eating disorder and the perfectionism and that achiever, like, some of that you're born and some of that is based off of your circumstances. But it was also, I've spent a lot of my life seeking other people's approval and opinions, right? Like, is everybody okay? Do they like me? Am I saying the right thing? And what is their opinion? Or even as strong and or as confident as I may come across with my own opinions, internally I'd have that dialogue. And so with the affirmations and the positivity and, all the ways to thrive and live your best life, it was like I was seeking other people's opinions and then the approval of them, even if I never met them, and I'm buying a product, that they'd be like, oh, wow, job well done on your quarterly workbook or, whatever, your journal. And I never had taken the time to be like, what actually works for me? And what am I made up of emotionally? Like, what is my predisposition? Like, am I more optimistic? And I just have highs and lows. Like, where am I in my stage of life? It was about everybody else and what their vibe was, instead of really understanding what my vibe is and what best suits me, and not having shame about the fact that, what, sometimes the best recharge and motivator for me to be positive is to be under my weighted blanket with a heating pad and, endless episodes of Friends. Like that, I'm going to come out feeling real grateful if I have a couple hours to do that, versus forcing myself to do the 5 steps of whatever somebody else is telling me to do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think when we, when we think that we're like trying to control our emotions and we're actually ignoring them, and if we can really, but they're really controlling you, you know what I mean? And I call this like coming out sideways in our house and with my kids, and it's just, when you're able to recognize what's going on with you, just like you said, and what you really need. I just need to get under a blanket and have a heating pad and watch, a couple hours of Friends. I'm good to go. And like being able to sit in that, I mean, that's key. Like being able to hear and feel that for yourself is so important.
Well, and your best friend Hannah, she just posted a reel about this.
Yes, I
that
loved
resonated like so much with me, because going back, to what we were talking about, like being busy and doing all the things, I still, as much as I can recognize and tap into what I need, and I can rest much easier now than I have ever been able to do before, I still have that feeling of, oh, I don't want anybody to know, like, it's 3:00 and that's what I'm gonna choose to do. Like, I'm embarrassed. Or when it's like, oh, list all your hobbies. I'm like, I'm not a photographer or a baker or a gardener. Like, what do I like to do? I like to binge watch Netflix and read a book. Like, and so there's still some shame of like, oh, this makes me not a whole person. This makes me not a good person. But the opposite is true, because like I just said, I'm going to come out of that couple of hours feeling much more recharged and grateful than if I was doing anything else. So step into that, and the more you lean into that and celebrate that, then the more you'll become comfortable with doing what fits for you, because it, like I've said before, it's not one size fits all relative to this journey of living your best life or having the kind of mindset that, we want, whether we call it positive or abundant or whatnot.
Yeah, I think it, also that just goes really with a lot of those internal and external boundaries we have for ourselves. And and I think, I know you had said too that we're starting to see a therapist again and really working on these boundaries. And same, I feel like we really are. I'm in a constant state of readjusting my boundaries when you have 4 children. Let's just say that.
That's a whole different boundary setting.
Oh man. But it's for yourself. Like really, like I have rediscovered, and I've talked about it a few times as well, or actually a lot on my Instagram, of how big of a martyr I am. And I did not recognize how much, and that in figuring out that internal and external boundaries now on not letting myself be in that space and holding my kids' emotions and letting them like have these things themselves is like insanely difficult. Oh my gosh. It's been rough.
I don't have 4. I have 1, but she is she's 11. So
my oldest is 11.
Yeah, we're in this preteen. There's a lot of emotion, and it can be overwhelming. And everything we're saying we don't want forced down our own throats, like to see that you're just stop complaining about that. I mean, I literally caught myself saying to her yesterday, she was complaining about something, and I was like, so and so's dad's in the hospital. And then I was like, I had to find myself like, stop trying to compare what somebody's going, like, let her, you can't, what you want for yourself, you 100% want for your children, but then we're also so quick to throw on them bad habits or lessons that we've been taught or have picked up ourselves. And I was like, wait a second, stop, like, let her work through it. Like, obviously give her tools and coping skills. You don't want her walking around like it's a beautiful day and saying it's raining and when it's not.
Right. That denial piece.
Yeah. But I also am like, I don't want to, I'll never say to her, stop crying. Like, I will never say that, but clearly I'll make other mistakes in saying like, hey, don't be upset. Somebody else has it much worse. Like, but I luckily had stopped myself. But yeah, there's a lot of emotions there, and figuring out as a parent, as a daughter, as a friend, like what are respecting other people's boundaries and seeing that, and putting up, like, to me, what I'm realizing, the biggest source of peace to my anxiety is not all of the things that I was trying to take on, but it's actually being really clear with myself on what works for me and what doesn't.
Right.
And then holding myself and other people accountable to that. And it's so hard, especially when you're talking about family members or best friends or whatever it is. It's the hardest thing, but for me, because again, I can only speak to my own experience, understanding those boundaries and then figuring out ways to slowly inch towards those has been what's created me the most ease in my anxiety.
Yeah. No, definitely. I think, yes. Just so many yeses. Yes. Yeah. It's just, again, when you were saying about like, you want to teach your daughter the tools and things. And I think for me, what came up was, I didn't resonate with the martyr. I was like, no. And I don't know if you've seen my page, like I talk a lot about the shame shadows.
Yes.
And so I was like, no, my mom is the martyr. Isn't that so funny? Like, I'm like that. I was sitting on a couch with somebody and I was like, they were like, well, where do you think you learned it from? And I was like, ew, like gross. Like, I am not my mom. I am not the martyr. And it's just, and there is a lot of ways I'm not like my mom. And I do like pride myself on that. Let's just say this. But I do think it was really interesting because, again, you hear all the time, like actions speak louder than words, right? I say a ton of things about boundaries to my kids on not holding other people's emotions in, like not to not hold emotions. Sorry, I said that wrong, but back up. But to not take on others' emotions.
Right.
But I do it myself.
Oh my gosh. That is so an Achilles heel for me, where I can walk into a room and I'm instantly anxious because I can tell somebody's already upset. And then I feel responsible, or I'm worried about what this person next to me is going to say to this person across from me, because I know that they don't maybe like each other. And what if this person, like, I'm already anticipating and holding on so tight. There's so many times my husband and I are going into a situation and it's like not anything serious. Like, it's a dinner. And I like am so anxious inside that I can't even enjoy myself because I'm worried about the emotions I'm going to take on of somebody else, or, feel like I have to navigate for somebody else before they get to that negative state. And those are areas where I really have to work on boundaries. And that's also an example of, no matter how many things I write down that I'm grateful for, or no matter how much yoga I do, that's not going to fix that aspect. Like, that's going to be deeper work. That's understanding what is the root cause of that, and working with a professional to get to a place of resolution and creating tactics in those situations to handle it.
Right.
So that's like the difference between some of these, tips and tricks to help with, a great happy mindset versus actual tools to deal with some of the things that cause us the greatest anxiety or cross our boundaries and things in that world.
Yes. And I think, with that, I think, boundaries for me when I started was really scary and hard. And I think that, and still can be, right? It can be difficult figuring it out and just being able to like have the ebb and flow of it. But I think when we're able to see that boundaries is a great tool to actually keep us safe and to give more, we're able to have that box that we so like, right? As people, we like to have that box. It makes us feel comfortable. So I want to give that analogy just because people do get really afraid of boundaries, but it gives us that space to feel your feelings. That, you know what I mean? To create that small opening of when your feelings come up, like to be able to have that and to give yourself self-compassion.
Totally.
Yeah.
To give yourself that grace.
Yeah. Because if we have no room for our feelings, we can't show up for others.
No, and the other thing too, and the whole point around self-compassion or compassion for others or grace for ourselves or grace for others, it goes back to that example I was saying with my daughter where, we're not going to be a perfect parent. We're not going to be a perfect student on our life journey. We're just not. We're going to make mistakes. We can have a whole toolbox of like, these are all the things that, you should do and honor, and they can all be right, but we're still going to make mistakes. I'm still going to say something that I shouldn't. And it's, to me, I've always said this in my writing, healing isn't like the absence of whatever the issue or the pain is. Healing is being able to identify it that much more quickly and to pivot from it. Yeah. So what I said to my daughter yesterday wasn't the right thing that I wanted to say, but I'm not going to wallow and shame in it. And now I'm a horrible mother and I should have never been able to have a daughter because look what I'm doing to her. And I'm not going to shame her. I'm going to say, oh, I didn't mean to say that. Like, I'm going to switch gears and I'm going to say like, why do you think you're complaining about X, Y, and Z? Like, let's talk about it. Or I'm going to say, I don't have the capacity to go into this conversation with you right now. Like, I'm going to go in the other room and get my blankie and we'll talk later. Right. Yes. So that's the grace. That's the compassion. You do you, I'm going to do me. Like, either we can connect in this moment right now, or we can't. Or like, if it's just self-reflection, I can process this right now by myself, or I can't. And then doing what you need to do to get into a time and a place where you can process or do what needs to happen.
Right. Yeah. And I know all of that can be so hard for people to hear. I know that, for me, that was in the beginning of my own journey was super difficult to even understand that, feeling our feelings can in fact create a happier life because, I wasn't in denial anymore. And I think, because the thing is when we're not in denial, you're able to, it opens up this whole world when we are in denial, and it's super scary. Like, it almost feels like, or I thought I was going to open up Pandora's box, right? Like, and then I couldn't shut it off. And, I'd be out of control. Like, it just would hurt so much. And you know what? Like, it did. There were times when I opened it in the beginning that it did hurt so much. And I, remember just crying in bed, going through my divorce. And that was in the thick of my healing. And there were some times that I, would say I'll never be happy. Right. And I'm always going to feel this way. And, something's wrong with me. Right. Like, we've been there, and it still makes me emotional. Like, now when I look at her though, like me, like I can see how much pain I was in, and I was able to show up for myself, and I can feel it now. Like, I'm also, know the feelings pass, and that my feelings are valid, and that not all my feelings are truth though. Right. Like,
correct.
Yeah, that I can still validate them and feel them and show up for myself. Having this openness has created so much room for my feelings, and I don't have to just shove it all down, all of them. And I can have more space for myself and love others, and hold space. I mean, that's what, empathy is being able to relate to somebody, again, not taking on their feelings, but being able to see my feelings and their feelings and show up.
Yep.
And I was listening to this TED Talk by Susan David. Have you heard it, on toxic positivity? It's really good. I should link it in the show notes.
Yeah, you should link it. For sure.
And she was talking to someone who said, I didn't want to try because I didn't want to feel disappointed, or I just want these feelings to go away. And she said, I understand, but you have dead people's goals.
Oh, yes. Are you alive or are you dead?
Yeah. And she said, only dead people never get broken hearts, never experience disappointment. Tough emotions are a part of life. And she said, discomfort is the price of admission to a meaningful life.
Yeah. No, and I just think that's full circle in terms of everything we've talked about with, leaning into our truths, leaning into our feelings, releasing the things that aren't serving us, understanding what actually does serve us, boundaries, understanding boundaries of other people and ourselves. Like all of that is uncomfortable.
Yeah.
All of that is super uncomfortable because you're not just doing, you're being, you're living, and it's uncomfortable. But I think at the end of the day, that's going to get you your most fulfilled life, whatever that looks and feels like for you. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's a happy face. And it doesn't mean it's any one specific practice. It's doing those things that feel most authentic to your life.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, a great question that, we can all ask ourselves in this is like a couple that I had wrote down for us to think about is, do I allow myself to feel all ranges of emotions? How do I feel with others having all ranges of emotions? Do I avoid and push them away to be happy and positive? And so I think, wrapping up that conversation, those are some good indicators of, where we need to start. And I think the best antidote for ourselves is that grace and self-compassion when we're going into this. And I would say that can be the hardest part of really getting into that. So I just want to encourage people to have that self-compassion. We're all learning. We're all figuring it out. There are moments I for sure have been and still do the toxic positivity. So,
oh my gosh, totally.
Yeah. So I want people to know I am in no way like not in that category sometimes, but I think it's really important to be aware of and finding again that balance with us all.
For sure.
Yes. So do you have anything like last minute notes on all of that we discussed before?
I mean, I feel like we covered the basis and there's a lot there, a lot of reminders for myself, new ways to look and talk about it based off of some of what you've shared. So I feel like it was a really well-rounded conversation. I appreciate very much being a part of.
Yeah, no, me too. I think this conversation was hard for me to like make notes on because I felt like I felt the weight of it. So I hope people like really do get, something out of it. I know that I got something out of our conversation. So that's important to me, but I definitely think that I stumbled a couple times on myself and giving myself grace on wanting to articulate things that I wanted in our conversation because it is so important to me. I don't know if you can relate to that.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. And we will not leave this conversation and beat ourselves up for what we said or didn't say.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we can recognize that this is an ongoing conversation, right? And whether it's with each other or other people, the more we talk about it, the less shame there is around it, and the more grace and compassion that can be built out of it. Because, whether it's on the same scale or higher or lower, like everybody can relate to what we're talking about on some level. And that's the key in joining forces with, navigating this uncomfortable place and space to be in sometimes.
Absolutely. And I'm saying that because I don't normally say this. Like I don't normally say to people on the podcast, or I haven't yet, like, oh, I stumbled, but my saying to my guests is I show up so you can too. And I want people to know that I feel like you've created that space too. So that's why I'm sharing something vulnerable, because I appreciate the way that you are showing up. And so I wanted to be vulnerable because I feel like you are. So thank you so much for the space that you do create for people. And I hope people go and check you out too.
Thank you so much.
I do want to ask you, I asked all my guests, what is one of the gifts of them?
Yeah, I love this question. And I think it's something, you want to talk about uncomfortable. I think people could feel uncomfortable because then you're like, what is my gift? Like, what is it that I bring to this world? And, but it's so important to pause and think about that sometimes. And so I appreciate this question very much. And when I thought about it, the first thing that came to my mind was that I feel like I am somebody who is there to encourage and to inspire and to motivate. So that is my gift. Like, I'm going to get into a conversation with you, and whether we're lifelong friends or we work together or I just met you on the street, my nature is to just engage in a level where you walk away and you feel a little bit more charged up, or you have a little bit of a more, you know, inspired or different perspective. I don't want you walking away thinking it's all rainbows and sunshine after everything we just talked about. But that you just feel loved, encouraged, motivated. I don't know what there's a one word to describe that. Because if I say the motivator, I sound like, you know, the Terminator, the motivator. I might sound like an action figure, but it's that's what I feel like my gift is to create that genuine connection, and where someone can feel, to your point, like accepted, and maybe just feel like a little bit more encouraged or inspired by our time together.
Well, I do. So thank you for sharing your gift.
Thank you. So do I.
Yay, good. Yay. So what are you up to right now? Where can people find you?
So I am at ShameLifter Society on Instagram, and www.shamelifter.com. And I would love to connect with your audience and continue to talk about all of the things.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for coming on and talking about toxic positivity with me and showing your face. And I look forward to future conversations with you.
Same. Thank you so much for this opportunity to be with you today.
Yeah, of course. All right, guys. Well, we'll see you next week. Thanks for joining in. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, friends, for listening in. If you found this helpful, please subscribe, share, and leave a review. If you'd like to be more involved in our community, hop over to Instagram and find me at Abigail Levisi. Keep showing up. I will too. See you next time.